VoyMonk here, doing a video voice vlog. Last week I was talking quite a bit about sports and as it relates to being content because I like to talk about a bit of that on this specific channel because I think it's important. Not necessarily being critical or critiquing, but just being aware of the fact that we're living in the year 2025, and guess what? It's related and relative, even if it's not specifically connected. But yeah, this week I was interested. Actually, last week I was thinking about talking about the news because news is also part of content as well. I mean, for the most part, it's something that we rely on to get our information about the world that we all live in, and it's something that we rely on. But unfortunately, sometimes news isn't always so reliable. And I'm not talking about the pivots or political stuff or things that people by nature can be kind of, divisive about. I'm talking about just the news in terms of its content, meaning the way it's delivered and what it's supposed to mean. I mean, there's a lot of jokes, of course, like on The Daily Show and, of course, last week, Tonight with John Oliver, both of which are some of my favorite satirical comedy, which I've also talked about. But yeah, they make fun of some things that are kind of really right on in terms of how it's kind of carbon copied, it's cookie cutter, it's hard to differentiate from one news market to the other, which I think is entirely intentional as far as from a business aspect. But do they really actually give news in terms of how it is that, at least for me, I feel is important? Because outside of maybe like a food recall, which there seems to be kind of a lot, I am aware that we live in the age of the 24-hour news cycle. And so sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to differentiate between, and prioritize the type of things that people may want. And of course, obviously, ratings coming into a factor there as well. I think sometimes that has, or I should say a lot of times that has to do with the way that we lean into these types of things. And so basically what I've been saying, it has kind of been a mantra for like the last few weeks. Not intentionally at the beginning, but yeah, it's content over production. Meaning that I do know that there are sometimes local stories that tend to get some access as well, because sometimes people complain about how serious it is or sometimes how depressing it is, which I don't think that that's something that the news is supposed to regulate. I think the news is supposed to be kind of a mirror, or at least a recorder. It records what's going on and it reflects that back on us and lets us know about the world that we're living in and what's going on. I don't think it's supposed to be entertainment. I don't think even in entertainment, I think there's limits to criticisms. But when it comes to the news, it's just, this is what hopefully we're being informed about. But sometimes it really doesn't feel that way. Sometimes it just feels as though, some of the things that are supposed to be the most important are supposed to be crammed within 5 minutes, and it barely gets any actual coverage or any deep dives into what's really going on. I mean, and even some of the segments, depending on what markets you live in, and you'll know what I'm talking about, I think, is when you do get something that they'll isolate and tell you a little bit more about, it's just like, okay, you're sitting down with Joe whoever, and you're getting to the bottom of maybe what's going on in the latest recall. The unfortunate problem is when you sit down and you actually listen to the information that's being disseminated, it's nothing more than like an office memo, meaning there's questions that are being asked and answered, but they really don't have any actual relevance. And sometimes that has to do with the fact that they're catering to whoever they're interviewing in some proportion. But quite honestly, I understand that, journalism, and as far as, doing reporting, doesn't have to be nasty and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes it goes with the territory, at least when I was growing up. I mean, I miss the days when, maybe an incessant news reporter that was kind of lampooned and that kind of thing was, willing to get punched in the face to get to the meat of a question or the heart of an issue. And of course, I'm not advocating for violence or anything like that. My point is just that news has changed, and it has become a bit more production over content, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more later on as we go. But that's going to do it for this Monday vlog. So until next time, take care.